Let us begin our worship by sharing Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where shall my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. God will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forward and forevermore. Welcome, friends, to the Church of Christ at Dartmouth College, a congregation of the United Church of Christ located in Hanover, New Hampshire. Our denominational byline is whoever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And this has never been more true than in this time of physical distancing, a time when we are not able to gather in person, but we are gathering in spirit to honor and celebrate the life of Steve Wilkerson. There was a lot of trouble getting started, a lot of different pieces of our ability to do this, and we appreciate your patience and we are grateful that you are here with us. This is our first remotely gathered memorial service, which is painfully obvious, and our transitions, even going forward, might not be as smooth as we'd like. There may be a moment or two when there's nothing on the screen, or a time when a microphone doesn't adequately amplify. But what is most important is that we are here together to honor Steve, and that cannot be diminished by a glitch or a momentary waiting for something. There is something about this day that makes me think of Steve. When I met with his amazing adult children and his wife, Kathy, a dear and valued member of our congregation, they described him, among other ways, as a kind of MacGyver guy. He could always think of a workaround, a way to fix things and make the seemingly unworkable function well. So not only are we doing a workaround as we figured out how to redo Zoom to include 300 when we thought we'd already done that, not only have we done a workaround to do a remote service when we didn't know how to do that a month and a half ago, but the weather today was supposed to be a snowstorm on May 10th. And with family and friends coming from Maine and New Jersey and Massachusetts, that would have been complicated if we were in our regular time frame. So I feel like Steve would have loved this workaround, even if the only thing we were dealing with was weather, that we were able to communicate and be together through the gift of technology. I think he would have appreciated our ingenuity, our determination, and hopefully our success. Steve had such a strong and vibrant character, which nothing could dim. His 6 wonderful grandchildren mostly knew him as a man bearing up under significant illness, and for them, this is their first experience of a close family member to die. So as we gather together today, one of the important things that we're doing is creating a full and vibrant portrait of Steve that his grandchildren can appreciate and live into for years to come. They have lots and lots of memories. He was always interested in them and supportive of their activities. But one of our responsibilities is to continue to share the stories of Steve for them and for all of us, to uphold the joy and delight that he took in all of us, but particularly in Kate and Drew, Riley and Ozzie, and Matthew and Sarah, so that they and we can know that physical death is not the end of meaning and the power of a person's life. Steve's legacy to them will live on as all of you continue to share his spark with them. Death is a natural part of life. Living fully means that there is much to remember, delight in, learn from, and live into. Although we are grieving the loss of our ability to speak with Steve, to make new memories, to gather together and wait for his unexpected prank, his spirit will nevertheless still be with us, and it will remain with you all. The fullness of his life will bless and inspire you. We are meeting today in this church because this is the community of faith that Steve and Kathy joined when they moved to Vermont. They both served on several boards and participated in many church activities and experiences. Our community is richer and fuller because the Wilkersons have been a part of us for the last 6 years. He will be missed, and his time here has been appreciated, and Kathy will be well cared for by our community. We gather together in God's strong and sustaining love, and as we do so, let us pray.
Please be with me in the spirit of prayer. Gracious God, in our grief we turn to you to be comforted with the strength of stories and the power of remembrance. Our need is beyond the help of human voice, so we ask you now to be present with us in this sanctuary that Steve loved, and virtually just as present. Grant us your peace and consolation and the joy of your grace. Hold Steve's family and friends in your sure hands, even as you have welcomed him to eternal rest. Amen. Our first scripture reading for today is from the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verses 1 through 6. Listen for the word of God. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God and believe also in me. In my Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way? Jesus said to him, I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. May our hearts be open to the hearing of these words.
We have 7 more scripture readings, but don't be afraid. They are short and pithy and full of love of friend and family, just like Steve's life. From Proverbs, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born to share trouble. John, this is what I tell you to do. Love each other just as I have loved you. No one can have greater love than to give his life for his friends. Proverbs again, the heartfelt counsel of a friend is as sweet as perfume and incense. Psalms, how very good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Romans, love one another with mutual affection. Outdo one another in showing honor. Ecclesiastes, 2 are better than 1 because they have the reward of double the toil. And Galatians, bear one another's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Scripture is replete with admonitions to value, support, advance, and enjoy our friendships and our relationships, our sense of being connected and being committed. Steve Wilkerson lived a life that bore the fruit of this wisdom, delight in the company of others, going out of his way to maintain contacts, spending time together, thinking up funny pranks, supplying the ingredients for good snacks and wonderful drinks. These were all in his repertoire. Scheduling time together in beautiful places, these activities created the rhythm of his life. If you are participating with us here today, you know that. He loved you all fiercely, with a loyalty that lasted a lifetime. It is no small thing to be able to make the people around you feel like they are just the ones you want to be with. Steve was fully present when he was with you, and his piercing gaze, his ever-present humor, kept us all on our toes. His memory for lines from the past or references made an intensity of both the present moment and the richness of what went on before come to all of his friends and relationships and family. It made one grateful to be included in his tribe. Steve lived intensely, and he lived joyfully, intensely, and in other ways. He had a temper that could be large and loud and full. And I'm glad that I never saw it because I'm a bit of a coward, even though I like to be like the lion. Arr! But I'm told that after the storm, he could start all over again. He would be calm and there would be a clean slate, and you all knew that delightful times laid ahead. I think this is the measure of a mature life. Hard emotions come to us all. We say things we regret. We do or don't do things that we wish we hadn't or had. The question is, can we pick up afterwards? Can we put the pieces back together after the fact and start again? Can we rebuild, re-engage, renew, and enjoy life together again? Steve could do that, and that is a wonderful gift. It showed a well-roundedness in his character, in his heart, and in his mind. It showed a breadth of being that enabled him to take the whole of a thing, all of it, and to make it his own. For over the past decade, Steve has been living with several different serious, life-threatening diagnoses. Throughout all of it, he and Kathy have maintained an optimistic, a dogged optimism, dutifully pursuing and enduring a tiring schedule of treatments, doctor's appointments, medicines, and therapy, all while stoically dealing with ever-increasing complications. They remain cheerful and hopeful and open to new options. But when it became clear that Steve's body was just too tired to continue to work so hard to be well, when the exhaustion of travel and new trials was more than he could bear, they graciously and openly prepared for what came next. I had a lovely few minutes with Kathy and Steve in their beautiful sunroom toward the middle of February, while they were still trying to assess what the future would bring. And Steve said that he would like to get well, but that he'd had a full and wonderful life, and that he was okay if there wasn't more in the cards. Just as he'd done everything else, Steve was open to accepting what came next, always hopeful, yet realistic, and very, very grateful. His life had been so good, so rewarding, so full, that he wanted more. But he wasn't going to let his ending, coming sooner than he'd hoped, spoil his appreciation for all that had gone on before. This is truly inspiring. Steve Wilkerson taught us how to live well. He created an amazingly accomplished family of bright, kind offspring, people you would love to count in your circle of friends. And he maintained a marriage to a strong, brilliant, wonderful woman for over half a century. And he cultivated lifelong friendships, as well as always making new ones. This would be a full and admirable life indeed. But Steve did more than teach us about how to do these things. He taught us something really important about how to die, with gratitude, full of the bittersweet notion that there is always more life to enjoy, but ready to say goodbye because of all that he had received and all that he'd made. So thanks be to God for the life and the gentle death of Stephen Greenlee Wilkerson.
This is indeed strange times and something that we're all getting used to. My dad was always good at improvisation, and I'm sure he would have had some witty comments about what was going on. Perhaps his sense of humor is why we have a snowstorm today in mid-May, as Mandy noted. And if he didn't cause it, he's certainly enjoying it. There's no greater tribute to my dad than the sheer number of people, literally hundreds of people, if you look at the number of people on the Zoom call right now, taking time to be part of this service. And particularly also everyone who reached out to my family and my mom in particular over the past few weeks. The pandemic is keeping us physically apart, but has also allowed us to create a service that, in his honor, so that many more people are here than would otherwise be able to. The participation of every one of you means a great deal to all of us, so thank you all very much. And perhaps this inclusiveness will be something that we can take forward after the pandemic has moved on, and we can once again raise a glass and share a story in person. When I first started thinking about speaking on my dad and trying to convey who he was, what he meant to me, and what his life meant, it seemed a little overwhelming. A little bit even more so when I realized that my sisters and I really didn't show up until the second act. And so I especially want to thank Aunt Wendy and Chuck Burdick, his college roommate, for speaking along with the second generation, including myself, our cousin Chip, and Stephanie and Tracey. Like many kids, my dad was larger than life. I remember when I was little, his boots were gigantic. They came up over my knees. I could barely walk around in them. I'd go clumping around the house. He had a big blue down jacket that was like a sleeping bag you could hide in. When I was 3 or 4, he came back from a business trip to California, and he brought a coconut with the husks still on it. We went about trying to remove the husk on the kitchen table, which at the time was made out of glass. To be closer, I got up on all fours and sat on top of the table so I could see what was going on. Suddenly, the table gave way and shattered. I fell through the table, yet miraculously found myself suspended like an acrobat in red overalls. Somehow, and to this day I have no idea how, my dad had caught me. I didn't just believe my dad was in touch with the divine, I had proof. As a parent, he believed in teaching, primarily by example and personal involvement. Life lessons were taught: mowing the grass, always had to be in straight lines, helping change oil in the cars, doing odd jobs around the house. It wasn't always what I wanted to do on a weekend morning, but I always learned lots when doing it. He taught me how to use tools, learned that a socket wrench could have both imperial and metric sizes, and you need to keep both organized and separate. Also learned that in a pinch, a 12mm and a 1/2 inch could usually do the same thing, but they were not the same tools. He believed in giving of himself. Every November, he and I would spend a weekend cutting and splitting kindling for my grandfather. It was my dad's Christmas gift to him once he wasn't able to make it for himself, so he could still have fires on cold mornings on Cape Cod. I wasn't old enough to use the electric saw, and I wasn't old enough to use the hatchet, so my job was the stacker. Each piece was exactly 14 inches long, so it would just fit in the box and no space would be wasted. Then we would go up and drop it off on Cape Cod, and we'd never leave before cleaning the gutters. I may not have been critical, and frankly probably wasn't useful to getting these tasks done, but he always kept me involved and made me a part of it. He wanted us to have life skills. Learning to drive a stick shift was mandatory. He would have me pull into a hilly neighborhood near our house, and then as we drove uphill, make me stop at each black mailbox. I would start to sweat as I tried to put the car back in gear, and he would look in the rearview mirror and talk about some Mercedes-Benz that had pulled out behind me and was pulling up remarkably close. But once you were competent with the stick, there was also the carrot. You got a $100 bill if you passed your driver's test using the stick shift. He took pride in his work at Nabisco. He was eager to share experiences with friends and family and recruited many of my siblings and cousins to work as sales reps. I got to learn about the pride in his work at a young age on Saturday mornings, when a quick trip to get cereal or milk at the grocery store would typically turn into a 90-minute plus mission that involved organizing all of the Nabisco products in the store, checking to see what the stock was in the back room, and occasionally quizzing some poor weekend store manager about how the aisle end cap display was doing and why the one from Keebler was bigger. He was a problem solver who loved figuring out creative problems to vexing issues. The bathroom tiles in the downstairs bathroom in New Jersey were out of fashion and cracked, so he put in AstroTurf carpeting. My friends who were football players loved it. Your teenage son and his friend didn't want to get up early? Simple. go around the house, set every clock ahead by 2 hours, including watches and clocks in the car, wake them up at 7, and chide them for sleeping till 9. Only when we got to a store and we couldn't figure out why the store that was supposed to be open at 8 a.m. was still closed when my watch clearly said it was 9:30 did he confess. He was always eager with a joke and a smile, and nearly always appropriate, either to emphasize a good time or diffuse a stressful one. He loved his family and friends and would go out of his way for them. He enjoyed weddings, but the highlight was always really the rehearsal dinner when he could toast and sometimes roast. He was a keen observer and thoughtful of his family and friends. He remembered birthdays and took an interest in people's lives. Shortly after my friend CJ was accepted at Notre Dame, my dad came home from a conference particularly excited. Lou Holtz, the venerable Notre Dame football coach, had been the keynote speaker. My dad had brought back a signed football with a personalized message welcoming CJ to the university. And 23 years later, that football is still in his office. As my dad and I grew older, our friendship changed. Father became more friend. He was always available to talk and offer guidance, and seldom, if ever, did he say no to any request. He was always my first call to celebrate something that had happened, or to discuss through a calamity, or just to say hi. And he was sage counsel through changes at work, changes in life, or how to get a ferry reservation out the vineyard for a car on a Sunday afternoon in late August. No visit to my dad was complete without at least a game of cribbage, really up until a few weeks ago. The routine was familiar. We'd have a drink or a cup of coffee. We'd talk in rapid fire banter, full of references and obscure inside jokes that no one else could really follow. On my dad's 70th birthday in 2011, my son Matthew Stephen Wilkerson was born. Thus began a series of joint birthdays, a 71st and 1st, 72nd and 2nd. My dad happily played along, donning bibs and eating birthday cake by the fistful, and loving every minute of playing with his grandkids. With limitless patience, he helped teach Matthew how to play cribbage. And Dad did such a good job in instructing Matthew on the strategy of forming cribs and pegging, so that now it's a challenge to take a game off of him, even though he's only 9. He was fortunate to keep his wits about him until the end. And even as his body gave way to the pressure of 20 years of intermittent chemo and cancer. His last days were at peace, and accepting the risks of our current time, my sisters and I were able to visit, albeit taking careful precautions. We were able to say goodbye, which is a gift few families get, and for one for which I will always be grateful. My dad took it in stride. He would wake up from his naps. With a sly grin, he'd look around and ask us, "So, where are we? Did you come with me, or am I still here with you?" On the night of April 23rd, he went peacefully to sleep at home. I will always be amazed how he comported himself with humor, grace, and a generally positive attitude, despite the challenges of the last 2 decades. I will miss all of the adventures, lessons, and smiles. And most of all, I will miss my friend.
First of all, thank you, Jim, and thank you, Reverend Mandy, for so encapsulating my brother Steve. What a privilege it is to be Steve Wilkerson's sister, even those rare times when I had to defend his rather bizarre activities. My deepest heartfelt thanks to you, Kathy, for being just a very special soulmate and helpmate Steve loved, needed, and enjoyed, all through his happily married life. He was so may you forever be supported with the bestest of memories. And more deep, heartfelt thanks to you, Stephanie, Tracey, Jim, and families, for always being there for your dad. Hero examples of the sandwich generation. He was so proud of each of you. And again, I can see why. Well earned and deserved thanks to you, Dr. Adam Schwartz, for all you did going above and beyond to treat Steve, making sure he was comfortable and upbeat right to the end, and helping Kathy and family as well. He sure loved you. Steve is not just my adored brother. He is my alter ego, my touchstone on politics, sporting events, the news, everything, and mostly we were in agreement. There was one huge difference. I never owned or drove a Volvo, or wanted to. I couldn't make him understand I wasn't interested in mechanics bills. I need a car that will go when I want a car to go. To know Steve is to love Steve. Why? To start, his unparalleled zany sense of humor, always bringing laughter and fun to the table. Next, his love of life and activity. The more creative, the better. Then his loyalty and love to family and friends. And let's not forget how much he loved helping others. The more complicated tasks, the better. And covering all, his admirable moral compass and fairness. And I could go on and on, but you know, you just wanted to be with Steve. I could elaborate on his big red temper, but let's save that for another time. Steve's favorites, his family, including Raven and Zephyr, roaming the supermarkets everywhere. Costco's best customer with reliable a close second, and no doubt an offshoot of his impressive lifelong executive marketing career with Nabisco. His frequent white knuckle car trips to the Vineyard Ferry to his beloved island, generally with being the last car squeezed on. With Kathy by his side, his treasured travels, annual travels about the world with his vineyard pals, Seaborn's favored visitors. Steve rarely going from A to B without stopping by C and D too. How he loved tinkering about finding a more creative way for things to work or not work. Of course, his tennis and golf, always bringing on more humor, and enjoying those social gatherings of all sorts, bringing on yet more humor and good cheer. Now, was he an imp growing up? You bet. The classic, his chemistry experiment blowing up in our newly renovated kitchen, spewing Coca-Cola and baking soda everywhere, with brother Owe and I feverishly helping to clean it up before our parents returned so Stephen could live. But that same imp became my trusty lifeline when my husband Bob passed away 5 years ago. So helping me to go forward at every turn. That's Stephen. President George W. Bush eulogized his dad as the light of 1,000 lights. But I submit Stephen is the light of 1,000,000 lights. Please God bless and take good care of our Stephen, taking time to love and enjoy him. Thank you all for being with us today. I look forward to our physically being together soon to swap more wonderful Steve tales. Please stay safe and well. Thank you. Bye.
You're okay. Are we on? Yes, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, good. Hi, Chuck Burdick, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I wanted to be cautious, so I'm with you there in spirit. I met Stephen in the fall of 1959. He and I were freshmen at Middlebury College, and I was introduced by Dan Phillips, and Steve and I became great friends. We ended up being fraternity brothers as well, and I should tell you that I came from a public high school in Plattsburgh, New York. I was a naive kid, and I didn't know anything about prep school kids. One kid in our class in Plattsburgh had, as they said in those days, been sent to Exeter, and we thought he'd done something unspeakable. And there was always a lot of talk about penny loafers, and heck, I paid more for my shoes at Sears than that, but I finally figured out that I had to have penny loafers, and so I got some. A story about Steve and me during the fraternity years. Stephen wanted to go into the Air Force, and so he applied, and they said he was just tall. He could make the height factor, but he didn't weigh enough. And so I said, well, Steve, once every afternoon go down to the fraternity house, and we'll have humongous peanut butter jelly sandwiches and a beer, and we'll see what happens, because I'm sure you'll gain some weight. Well, about 3 weeks later, we weighed each other. I put on 10 and Stephen had lost 2. And so he never got to fly a plane. I'll tell a Jaguar story this afternoon, but let's move ahead a little bit. I really remember meeting Wendy in New York one day. I was fascinated by Wendy because she was this smart person working for Sports Illustrated, and she had great just laughing. I remember one time we went down to Jamie's apartment on 13th Street, and we snuck into the liquor cabinet, and we all had a drink of scotch. And of course, it had to be, in Steve's mind, Hague Dimple Pinch. That was the only scotch they would drink. That was only one of the reasons why I think my mother thought Steve corrupted me, but I think his mother thought the same of me. So there we have it. Let me see. So I think, yes, it was Stephen, Sue and I who introduced Steve and Kathy to the vineyard. We went to Hart Haven with them one summer and stayed in the Crow's Nest. And as we all know, the vineyard became, I think, their spiritual home. And so over the years, we met each other and saw each other. We went our separate ways. We kept coming back and going out and coming back again for many years. And it was great to see our children grow to man and womanhood and to have their own children. Steve was always great at giving little gifts, as we've said. When we might be leaving the house sometime, we'd find Nabisco products in the car, like animal crackers and Oreo cookies and Ritz crackers. One time he gave me the gift of an ancient Volvo wagon. Wendy, you'll appreciate this. Yes, you could see the road under the floorboards, but he left it at our summer home here in Middlebury, a faded green Volvo wagon, in the back of which was an antique lawnmower. So that was very nice. Let me see, on and on. I had enormous admiration for Steve, especially as the cancer came back and would finally have its way with him. Toward the end, there were still those flashes of humor, the apparent calmness, the acceptance that time was getting short. I gather even on his last night, he woke and said to Kathy, "Am I still here?" And in the morning, he wasn't. He went gently into that good night after a life well lived. And his legacy moves on with Kathy and Stephanie and Tracey and Jim and their children, Kate and Drew, Riley and Aussie, Matthew and Sarah. I thought the world of Steve. My only regret is that I never told him that I thought of him with brotherly affections. May he rest in peace.
I really like my homemade mask, but it's a little bit more challenging. I'm Tracey, I'm Steve's middle daughter. As Jim said, we all came for the second half. We knew our dad as Dad. And it takes a long time for a kid to start to see their parent as an adult with a full lifespan. We hear stories about a childhood of throwing rocks over the house, of messing around with his siblings, Wendy and OA. We hear stories about breaking cars and fixing cars, and now we hear stories about dropping cars off at friends' houses as if they're going to appreciate them. We know that at some point our dad met our mom and they started flirting, which is just so weird. Then we know that they had their first kid, and that's when everything started from our perspective. So when I was little, I shaved with my dad. It was a regular thing, but it was more frequent when we were on a family vacation or when he wasn't heading off to work. He would take the blade out of his razor. I would stand on the sink in the bathroom. I'd cover my face with shaving cream, and then I'd set to work on my own face. I remember the sound of his razor going across his whiskers, and I remember that my razor made no sound at all, but the smell was the same. Recently, we've been looking through pictures of my dad, and Stephanie found a picture of just that, balanced precariously on the on the bathroom sink in Englewood, New Jersey, with shaving cream up to my eyeballs, shaving cream in my hair, and a razor in my hand. It was clear from looking at that picture that the most recent stroke that I had taken with the razor was straight down my nose. So there's so much that I love about that picture. It sparked so many memories. It's a reflection of the fact that my dad let us do things. He let us try stuff, and he let us make a mess. He encouraged us to do things even when we were going to do them badly. I was clearly not very good at shaving my face. But importantly, he wouldn't let the things that we had done badly stay badly done. One of the best gifts that I received, one of the best physical gifts, was a stable that was made for my Breyer horses. I wasn't really into doll houses, so this stable was a treasure. I didn't really pay attention to the fact that the paddocks weren't that big or the stalls were the wrong size. It was perfect. It was mine. And it was one of the few things as a second-born child that was really actually mine. One of the things that I like the most about this stable is that when I got it, it wasn't finished. There was the stable, and then there was a pile of tiny roofing shingles that needed to be put on the stable. What's better than an unfinished project? An unfinished project that gets to be finished with a hot melt glue gun. So there I was, the little kid, burning my fingers with the hot melt glue gun, putting those shingles on the roof, trying to keep them straight. And for me, it was perfect. Perfect project on my perfect stable. Except, it wasn't perfect. I was doing my best to get those shingles up there straight, but I was failing. I was young. My dad, he'd let me go ahead and he let me do a bad job, a poor job. And then he came by and he didn't let it stay poorly done. He took them off and he instructed me on how to do it again. Much like Jim talked about, like if you're gonna mow the lawn, you're gonna mow the lawn well. So with our dad, good enough wasn't really good enough. There are 1,000 examples of ways that he taught us to strive to do better. The 14-inch pieces of kindling that Jim talked about bringing to our grandfather's house, do you know how many wrong ways there are to take that kindling and stack it into my grandparents' garage? We do. Oh yeah, and for all three of us kids, we weren't allowed to take our driver's test until we could parallel park on a hill in a standard. We needed to show that we could change the oil in the car, change a tire, and we could. We all can do those things, and we did it because he took the time to teach us with the sure knowledge that we would learn. By the way, I don't remember any $100 bill. We might need to settle that out after this. One of the many skills I learned with my dad, perhaps the most important, is just knowing that I can learn a new skill. We all can learn new skills. And so can everybody. And maybe that's why I teach. Another thing I really appreciate about our dad is the connections that he made with people. Whether family or friends, he remembered specific things about each person. My college friend, Wright, sent me a note recently with a photo of his Fig Newton sweatshirt. Jealous? Yeah. We all want to have a Fig Newton sweatshirt. So apparently when Wright was working on the blueberry barrens, harvesting blueberries in northern Maine, his favorite snack was Fig Newtons. And somehow my dad got wind of that. Next thing you knew, he mailed Wright Hartman an Nabisco Fig Newton sweatshirt, which he still has. So for Wright, a passing comment about Fig Newtons turned into a new sweatshirt and earned my dad a new nickname, the Big Fig. So that conversation between my dad and Wright about Fig Newtons, blueberries, and sweatshirts happened probably about 25 years ago. And if my dad and Wright have stayed in touch through those 25 years, I would be surprised. Not shocked, but surprised. So jump ahead to this past summer. We're on Martha's Vineyard, and I got a message from Wright that says that he's going to paddle his sea kayak from Cape Cod over to Martha's Vineyard. So he does that. And turns out crossing in a kayak from Cape Cod to Martha's Vineyard is actually kind of challenging. And they weren't quite ready for the challenge of paddling back to the mainland. So my dad mustered the energy, made it down to the harbor, met Wright, and made sure that Wright ended up on a Steamship Authority boat to make his way safely back to the Cape. On my dad's phone, there aren't too many photos, I found out after he passed away, but there are a few photos of Wright with his little boat getting on the big boat. People mattered to my dad, and that's evident in so many ways. Family vacations are another place where we saw again and again that people mattered to our dad. Our vacations often involved spending time with other families. In the early days, adventures to Martha's Vineyard included, as you've already heard, the Burdicks, the Escalas, all of my parents' siblings, all of our cousins, and more. Adventures with Byard and Nancy Peak included camping among cows when we thought we might die, driving where we shouldn't, where we thought we might die, and sleeping on a pontoon houseboat. Again, you know, my dad would set the stage for good times and bring others along. And while he did plan a lot of these vacations, there are also lots of adventures where he joined in the fun, where the stage was set by other people. For years, we joined Chris, Lindsley, Whitney, Barbara, and John Wilkerson, not related, another set of Wilkersons, to be cone heads in a small town parade. It was definitely their thing. They were the original seamless cones. But my dad gamely joined and we followed, stoking the enthusiasm and adding more than a little fun. One notable time, he morphed from suburban New Jersey dad to General Norman Schwartz Cone. He was a master morpher. When we went to Tina Gellhorn and Sally's farm in upstate New York, which we did often, my dad morphed again, from business executive to farmhand, putting up snow fence and moving hay. Our dad was a connector. He linked our family, he linked our friends, he joined missions that were powered by fun and powered by the desire to be useful. He forged the lifelong connections that bring us together today. Personally, I'm grateful that I was born into this family. I'm looking at an empty church with my brother, my sister, and my mom. So it's kind of funny to be up here, but I'm grateful for you three, very grateful. I'm grateful that I was parented by the awesome guy that was my dad. I'm grateful to my mom and that my parents stuck it out for 53 years of commitment to each other and then commitment to us three kids. We didn't really make life easy all the time. And now to their 6 grandkids. And I'm grateful to my siblings, Stephanie and Jim. We reformed our COVID-19 pod in order to be together for my dad's passing. Recently, I found myself thinking about milking stools. I'm the farmer in the family. Navigating this end-of-life journey hasn't been easy. Stephanie, Jim, and I bring different strengths to the table or the stool. Each of us is a leg that's dependent on the others, but brings stability to the whole. And I'm grateful to each of you. I'm also grateful to all of you who tuned in today. Our lives are shaped by each other, and our lives are shaped by you. To our extended family, thank you for joining the fun. To our friends, thank you for choosing Steve. Given the option, I would also choose Steve.
I was just saying that that after listening to everybody, it's a hard act to follow. Yeah, I'm privileged to be here today. I'm Chip. I'm always oldest son and Steve's nephew. And as many of you know, our family is a very close one. As Steve's brother married his brother's sister. Which is a fact that I really love explaining to people I haven't met before. It's always interesting to see if they can put it together legally. Anyway, this has meant that my earliest memories are of us getting together with extended family and cousins for holidays and birthdays, vacations, and all sorts of different events. In fact, it was hard to think about my first memory But I think it's, and the music was great, by the way, for the video, because my first memory, I think, is of being in Steve and Kathy's apartment in New York at a very young age, listening to the Beatles' Yellow Submarine album. So that music truly brought back memories along with the pictures. But it's hard to distill my memories of Steve down to just a short few sentences. Even harder to fully and accurately verbalize what they meant to me. He was and is so much more than an uncle to me. And I'm truly gonna miss our regular phone calls, our shared interest in marketing, and yes, those trips down the cereal aisle that were mentioned before are very familiar. His love of sailing, which ended up being somewhat of a career choice for me. And of course, Swedish cars, which we always had a healthy debate about which one was the best, which is clearly Saab. And also his assurances that we always had plenty of time to make our ferry. That said, today I don't want to focus on what I will miss, because there is a lot, but rather what I want to talk about is what I'll take with me going forward from my Uncle Stephen. And I think that's the following. It's a love for the vineyard that I have now inflicted on my family. It's a sense of purpose that comes from being constantly in motion and never sitting still. The importance of family. But not the formal relationship, but just truly getting together, even if it's a trip just to the vineyard dump. An appreciation of a good joke, and the love of laughter. The importance of friends. I've always been amazed that Steve and Kathy can show up just about anywhere and know someone, or quickly make a stranger a friend. And you've heard that from others today. And then finally, the eternal optimism that anything at all can be solved with a roof rack, Costco, and a little bit of confidence. So it will be tough this summer not seeing him on the front porch of Lexington Avenue. But I know that he will be with me in many, many ways as I go forward, and I'll treasure that. So I really appreciate everybody coming together here today and celebrating a life that was truly well lived. Thank you.
I'm Stephanie. I'm the oldest, and on behalf of my mom and our family, I want to thank everyone for being here and not being here today. Thank you for both. Thinking about what to say here is truly a daunting task, so in true Wilkerson fashion, I left it till the last minute. I might regret that a little now, hearing the wonderful things that my brother and sister and everyone else had to say, but I think my dad would understand and sympathize. There are just so many things I want you all to know about my dad, and so many memories that I want to share, but that's not possible. But as I thought about my dad, I do walks in the woods every morning with my dog, and had a lot of time to think, and I kept this phrase, expect the unexpected, kept popping up to mind. It really seems to define a lot of life these days, but it also captures a lot of what I have come to appreciate about my dad. He was not big on expressing emotions with words, but if you were on the receiving end of one of his unexpected jokes or his unexpected surprises or actions, that was his expression of love. Some of these unexpected moments were funny, some were exciting, some were embarrassing, some were infuriating, some were touching. And I learned to expect the unexpected early on. And I just have a few examples. For example, the baked bean incident. And these are just, things that would happen on a daily basis on a random Tuesday. When I was young, I was a little bit of a picky eater, and I must have complained quite vociferously at dinner the night before about the baked beans we were eating. And I'm sure we had some words about that. So the next day I'm at school and I open up my paper bag and I take out my peanut butter and jelly, which is what I had every single day for lunch. But instead I pulled out 2 pieces of white bread with cold baked beans oozing out from the sides. Yeah, so I got that message. Not a word from my dad that this was coming. His ability to play the straight man really did take his unexpected gestures to the next level. My brother reminded me of the time in high school when I had somehow procured a case of beer and hidden it in the trunk of the Volvo sedan I was driving at the time. And maybe due to his own teenage years, my dad sussed out that plan, but he didn't say anything. So I got to my friend's lake house all proud of, I got the beer, really cool, opened the trunk, and it was actually a case of Diet Coke. So without, pulling me aside and getting angry or anything else, he got his message across a different way. He loved a well-planned surprise. I'm sure he was sorry not to be there when I opened the trunk of the car. But it wasn't all jokes. There were some surprises, like when I was in my 20s working in consulting and my firm asked me to go work in Jakarta, Indonesia for several months or maybe even a year. And at that time in my life, that sounded pretty scary to me. And I used to talk to my dad a lot about business, so I called him expecting him to say, "You're right, that's outrageous, don't go." But he was the one who pushed me to say yes to that, who really said, "This is an opportunity, you need to do this." And that was unexpected, but really what I needed. And so I went on to go to Jakarta and fall in love with Southeast Asia. And I came back later and quit my job and then went back to Southeast Asia to teach English in Thailand. I'm not sure that that was the trajectory he was, pushing me towards, but I really, and I've thanked him so many times for that push, for knowing that that's what I needed, and not just doing maybe what I had expected. Of course, sometimes living with the unexpected could be mortifying, especially as a kid. I can't talk about my dad without acknowledging his love of flaunting the so-called rules. It used to drive me crazy that the rules somehow didn't apply to him. And so it was often maddening, secretly fun sometimes, and now the source of some of our favorite stories and greatest laughter. So an outing with my dad might look something like, "Oh, does that house say no trespassing, that house that's under construction over there? Clearly, we should go duck under the yellow tape and check out that house and walk all around it." What is that dotted line on the map? Does that mean don't take this road? Oh, well, great. Let's see what this rental station wagon can do. Fast forward to us bottoming out on a creek bed crossing somewhere in Utah. Mortified. I was mortified. Oh. But now it's a funny story. And of course, the legendary, can we get the luggage pod, the 5 bikes, and the sunfish all on the roof of the Volvo for the race to the ferry? Of course we can. Let's stack them up. Let's MacGyver some bungee cord contraption to hold them on and make a mad dash to the ferry. There's no way that was legal on the highway. Anyway, it was actually probably not that unexpected that from my vantage point in the way back of the car, I saw the bikes flip off the roof of the car and go bouncing down the breakdown lane on the New York Thruway. Yeah, I was not very happy about that one, I have to say. My brand new bike bouncing down the breakdown lane. Anyway, I look back now and laugh. And it's fun to see, from sending out the email about the Zoom service, I got a lot of responses. And one of my favorites was from Sarah Burdick, whose dad Chuck spoke earlier. And they're good family friends, and Sarah, when she was in her 20s, lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and spent a lot of time with my parents. Just another example of my dad reaching out to his friends and the family of his friends and taking care of everyone. And she, among other things, was reminiscing about when my dad went through a do not enter rope near the Statue of Liberty, and she was absolutely horrified. And my dad thought it was a hoot. It's just par for the course, life with Dad. So these stories are endless, and if you know them, you've probably been around for some of them. Sometimes hilarious, sometimes touching, mortifying, but always memorable. And these unexpected memories are what I hold most dear. My reaction to living with a dad with a flair for the unexpected was to become a pretty obedient rule follower my whole life. I took the opposite tact. My initial instinct is to avoid the unexpected, to control everything I can. But looking back on my dad's life and reflecting on what I remember, and a life so rich with close family ties and exceptionally close friendships and endless stories of humor and adventure, I really hope that I can learn to follow his lead and to be more open to the unexpected, to embrace it even. I really hope I can be the unexpected for someone else and bring an element of surprise and joy to their life, as my dad brought to so many others. It's going to be a challenge, but I hope I can embrace and take with me some of what my dad brought to others. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was really incredible putting together the email list to see that, we had everyone from childhood friends from Pingree and Colonia, friends from Middlebury, from his time at Nabisco, from the early years in Englewood, and from Chatham, and of course friends from the Vineyard, and even most recently the many friends that they've made here in the Upper Valley and in Hanover, New Hampshire. You all meant so much to my dad, and every one of you made his life richer. I also want to say thank you to Mandy for spending so much time with our family and for making this happen. And to Jonathan, our tech guy, who you guys don't get to see behind the screens there. And to Rob and Henry and Rita and everyone for helping us pull this off. I know my mom wants to say thank you to everyone as well. This has meant so much to her to be able to get together in this crazy pandemic time. And just one more little logistics. We're gonna try a virtual reception at 3 o'clock. We're gonna be home at my house. We're gonna have some lunch. We're gonna take a deep sigh of relief. We might raise a glass, and we invite you all to join us. We will be sending out a link to yet another Zoom. This one probably from me. It's gonna be a little chaotic, but we invite anyone who's interested to join us to share some stories of my dad, of your friend, Steve. Yeah, so look for that maybe around 2:30. We'll send out the link. Again, patience required, but we really hope whoever wants to join us can be there. So, thank you.
Only slipped away. Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes that we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be used in the household as it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the ghost of a shadow on it. Life means all that it ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolute, unbroken continuity. What is this death but a negligible accident. Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I am but waiting for you for an interval, somewhere very near, just round the corner. All is well.
Before we gather together in prayer, I'd like to reiterate that this is a family full of gratitude. Kathy has been so incredibly touched by over 100 cards that came in the first week, by the ways in which all of you have reached out and upheld them. And so please know that every gesture that you have made has been received and appreciated and will be carried forward with this family. Let us join together in prayer. O God, our strength and our Redeemer, giver of life and conqueror of death, we praise you with humble hearts. With faith in your great mercy and wisdom, we entrust Stephen Greenlee Wilkerson into your eternal care. We praise you for your steadfast love for him all the days of his life. We thank you for all that he meant to those who loved him and for his faithfulness to every task that he undertook, including his love of you. We thank you, God, for the individual relationships that each of us shared with him and how he inspired and taught us, amused and entertained us, how he made his family and friends feel that they were just who he wanted to be with. We thank you for the fullness of his life. We ask if there is any unfinished business that you, O God, in your great mercy, bring us to peace in our thoughts. If there are hard feelings, soothe them. If there were unsaid words, calm us and imbue us with your everlasting forgiveness. Enable us to trust that you, O God, are not bound by time or space, and neither shall our ability to make peace with one another be bound. We don't always love perfectly, God, but we want to. Give us peace, we pray, in our love of Steve and in our full and complete knowledge of his love of us. We thank you, O God, that for Steve all sickness and sorrow are ended, and death itself is past, and that he has entered the home where all your people gather in peace. Keep us in communion with you in every time and place, so that at the last we too may rejoice together in the heavenly family where Jesus Christ reigns with you and Holy Spirit, one God forever. We thank you, O merciful and gracious God, for teaching us the lessons of death that can be learned in life, so that living or dying, we may be with you and experience your grace and pleasure forever. We ask that you bless and preserve Steve's friends and family, especially his wife, Kathy, their 3 adult children, Stephanie, Tracey, and Jim, and their spouses and their children, Kate, Drew, Riley, Osi, Matthew, and Sarah. Uphold them, God, as they say goodbye, even while they continue to live in their gratitude for having Steve in their lives. And help us all to be comforted by your sure and lasting promises, both for Steve and for ourselves. Hear us now as we gather together using the words that your Son Jesus taught us, praying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Friends, thank you for being with us in this time that is so unusual, both as we connect with one another remotely and as we imagine living forward into life without Steve being a daily part of our lives. But know that we have been blessed by his life and will be blessed. And take this blessing with you. May the road rise up to meet you, and may the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, and the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold us all in the palm of God's hands. Be blessed. Know that you have been loved and that you love. Amen.